Well, hello everybody. It's good to be here and do this live. In fact, the next three, this is part 1 of 3, are going to be very explosive. They're going to go through so many things that all of you, that is all First Peoples and Canadians and Americans, need to know and see. There's things about this country that make no sense, no logical, common sense, but yet here we are, we continue going straight ahead in the same narrative without ever addressing these core flaws that are right in front of our face, always have been, and nobody wants to change. Nobody wants to accept them. You ever ask yourself, why is it Canada has no ability to launch value and supply chains, can't trade with itself, can't organize any kind of global strategy? They're under somebody else's direction that doesn't produce any meaningful results for Canadians. Now we look at other countries, that just isn't the case. The United States of America, value and supply chains globally. Military beyond all measure globally. This is the same for Russia. This is the same for China. In fact, it's the same for a lot of other countries. And then so one does deep analysis. Why are those countries successful and ours isn't? And you start to map countries based on many factors. Americans have been doing this a very long time. It's called comparative analysis. They do it in multiple industries. The newest one that I'm blessed to be a part of is comparative law. That is comparing your country's law to all other countries' laws and legal systems. How does yours operate? How do theirs operate? Well, economics has been going on for a while. They have that analysis too. And we can go literally by ministry by ministry. We do all that, and yet there are unanswered questions as to why specific countries in these other comparisons fall into the same pitfalls today. When they started down that dark road, why they're not functioning as well or even comparably to other countries in the world. Well, that's where this has to come into play. This is how the world was mapped and utilized, largely by Mercantile, which is kind of funny on the name of the mapping system called Mercator. Mercator mapping. Very old. It's as old as colonialism. It's entirely utilized by every single monarchy the world's ever known, then and now today, but not since 1945, utilized by any republics on this earth, including communists. We're going to get into that. I'm even going to show you how even North Korea utilizes the new world order system versus the old world order system. And that's really what we're talking about here. What do I mean by New World Order? Well, if you ask your average Canadian, they're going to tell you a whole different New World Order, a globalism of evil. But the reality is, as Americans, Russians, and Chinese know for a fact, that is officially Old World Order. Some know it even better. America has a great perspective on it, not as good as the Chinese, for they know it to be many thousands of years old. They were even involved in it themselves, as were Americans who in their infancy rose up and got out of it. A time came when those countries that were subjugated themselves or compressed by those systems moved out of it after World War II and began to define the world differently. Created a new world order. They said, nah, no more of this colonialism. We say never again. We mean Never again. The basis of the United Nations, logo made in what's called a global template, using the world as a sphere. Azimuthal mapping, as it's called. It's been around for 500 years. People were put to death for the idea, yes, this is flat Earth versus global Earth, the sphere. The colonial world, the colonial powers, the kingdoms of old didn't want the average subjects and savages learning the truth of it. Why is that? By distorting lands, distorting waters, creating a centralized viewpoint from the kingdom's perspective, you not only increase the size and viewership of the kingdoms, you minimize everybody else, you fixate everybody on that center, those 9 kingdoms, and you make it look like it's impossible or only achievable to travel between those kingdoms in the world. Those are the roots of trade. Those are the roots of the military. Well, as we know, that's not how the Allies post-World War II, who changed that whole system under the United Nations, 2 of which promised that they would educate all their people in these new realities, not so new, but truths as they are, and they would educate their people, starting with what we're going to go through today. I can assure you, Americans, Chinese, and even Russians, this has never been taught to the average Canadian subject. In fact, if you want to learn about the things we're going to go through, you have to have a crown position, an education where you swore to the crown to get this knowledge. It's no accident Canada has no military. It's no accident Canada has no value in supply chains. They don't live in the or outside of the Mercator system. They haven't, ever. And again, it's no accident. That's just how the monarchies like it. It's not just Canada, it's many, many other nations. In fact, absolutely 1/3 of the population forced into this. Probably 2/3, maybe even upwards of 70%, don't even have this in their system at all. Now, the Chinese do. India does limitedly. America does, obviously, and so does Russia, obviously. By having their advanced militaries the way they are, it pushes it on their systems domestically. And of course, that transcends not only into politics, but it also transcends into economics and trade. And clearly that's how they operate, and we don't. So without further ado, we're going to go through these things. It's very important. I believe these things are the transition Canadians need to move forward with the idea of the 51st state, to really understand where Donald J. Trump, the GOP, and so many Americans are coming from, where they're looking at you Canadians like, what is wrong with you? Well, this is the start, the very first answer to that. And there are other portions that we're going to get into. Absolutely the entire global drug trade. We're going to get into that tomorrow. But we have to start here. We have to transition Americans and Canadians into this understanding, I believe, first, before we can go any more forward. I know a lot of friends and followers will get a lot out of it. There's going to be a lot of negative comments. You will see, after the publication of this video, you will see the haters and the nutters come flying onto my feed. No, 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 which is a highlight of, in the absence of education, in the absence of being taught as a child, that is what festers. When you don't have answers, you make them up. It's called a human condition. It's what humans do when they can't get answers, when their minds can't move forward because there isn't an answer, they will make it up. A lot of times looking for the answer, they'll make it up in order to move on and function in life. I know this may seem funny to Americans. I assure you it's nothing funny in this world when a majority of the population of this earth believes in these narratives and were raised this way. And that is the truth that we're going to highlight today. Thank you, and we'll start the slides. Okay, folks, so I start with this. It's a picture of Donald J. Trump in a spherical globe, AI generated, and there's Donald J. Trump in his red tie, and now his head's on Greenland. He's at the Arctic center point, looking at the world as it is from space, but he's on that Earth looking out, meaning if any human was standing there at that scale, like a satellite looking onto Earth, this is how they would see it. And Donald J. Trump sees the Soviet Union, China, Europe, and he sees his North America behind him. He says, we have to be here. This is where the line has to be in the sand. This is for American national security. Just look at the world. Look how far it has to go down. It's going to go across to the Panama Canal. We have our trade routes right through the Middle East. Gaza Strip would make a nice point. We've done a lot for Israel. It's time Israel hand that over to us. As you all saw earlier this week when Netanyahu came to visit Donald J. Trump, he was surprised to hear that Donald J. Trump announces, yeah, we will take the Gaza Strip. That will be American for all we've done for you. It's the least your best friends could ask for. And we'll create a refugee program for all the Palestinians, and this will be in American territory. Sound good? Well, Netanyahu was, of course, outside of his country. He's wanted globally, and of course said, well, that's thinking outside the box, but he quickly left, not happy at all. Apparently, folks missed all that. In 1945, the Allies of World War II, 5 of them presented this. Russia was actually the first on this. America a close second, but it was Russia who was well ahead in azimuthal mapping. And Russia had already had many, many maps made of the world as it really is and was already transitioning into that. And of course, America, and they both were strong in World War II. They both transitioned actually during World War II. It's how they won the war, because it was actually Germany who was breaking free into azimuthal mapping. That's how they dominated Europe and why they were so strong, as they moved away from the flat earth style view and centered Germany as the center of the world and looked at the world from the azimuthal system. The Allies made the United Nations. Many people have this wrong. I'm going to read you Article 1, Paragraph 1. To develop friendly relations among nations based on respect for the principle of equal rights and self-determination of peoples, and to take other appropriate measures to strengthen universal peace. Peace through strength. United Nations Security Council. Permanent 5 members. San Francisco, USA, Russia, China, and only the United Kingdom and France, who France was completely blown away and occupied by Germany. UK was bombed, crumbling, their empire crumbling. They couldn't maintain it, and at that point, USA and Russia could have easily finished off the United Kingdom. They said to them, if you want to go forward with all your colonies, you're going to decolonize, you're going to give all these nations self-determinations, you're going to free all peoples, no one will be subjugated again, ever. Decolonize the world. Agree. And they most certainly, wholeheartedly, agreed to the terms and made the Allies of World War II and put these things into law called the United Nations Charter that nobody ever likes to read or look at, let alone the 5 allies of World War II. They never do. Because it's not the nature of the colonizer to. So, from the beginning here, you can see some dates here. 1492. Oh, I'm going to shrink this a bit. 1492 to 1943, the Old World Order. Flat Earth maps. This is the map you all grew up with. You know it as a Canadian. You know it as many subjects in many of these 9 colonial kingdoms and all their colonial assets. Portugal, Spain, the Dutch, Danish, French, Great Britain, Sweden, Germany, and the Ottoman Empire. These are all empires, all the 9 colonial kingdoms. What don't you see here, everybody? Let's just go through this. So USA isn't there. Russia isn't there. China isn't there. What is it about this map of these empires and colonials? I know it's hard to see, but you can see some black, yellow North America. You can see orange Greenland. You can down to South America. I know it's hard to see, but there's the whole Central and Island America, Caribbean, as you know it. Yellow, pink. Well, there's a pink inside that black area in North America. There's a giant pink ring around the yellow in North America. You go down, there's a giant black, massive amounts of black. Then you go over and you see massive pink in Africa, massive yellow, massive blue. You see the black. You go over the Middle East, you see other colors, and you see some more of that orange. See a dark blue, a dark brown, more yellow, pink. A green. There's green in North America, by the way. You just can't see it. Green all the way through those islands. And then another big chunk of yellow. Then you go down to Antarctica, superimposed. And you see this orange and then yellow. What's all that about? Well, if we could superimpose the center, even though it is already superimposed, you'll find those 9 kingdoms in a small little region called Europe. See, Russia there's huge, right? There's a small area called Europe and a little island state called United Kingdom. And I promise you, on this flat earth map, those are superimposed. And they're still tiny as hell, but not their assets around the world. So what was yellow? Well, that's the United Kingdom. From this tiny little island, they got all this massive yellow regions on every continent of the world. All colonies. Look at the devastation of Africa, took Antarctica mostly, took massive amounts of Asia, Australia, Canada, North America. The Americans are under this. Then there's a pink you can't see that encompasses a whole bunch of that yellow in North America. That's France, massive France in Africa. You go look at the little area, little country of France in Europe. You can barely see it on that map. That's what they have, and these are their years of their empires. What you'll notice is Russia and China, and we'll get into USA. Well, USA didn't exist all the way up until 1770s, but they never expand outside of their territories, even USA, very minimally, very, very minimally. What you can't see is the many islands in this photo because they're so small. But how many crown colonial islands, how many people pushed by these 9 kingdoms of old world order, which is all of Europe. Ottomans are there too. They're there too. And they're devastating Middle Eastern colonization. Devastating. Even for the Greeks. You never hear about those stories. Well, folks, the heartbreaker of the old world order maps you grew up with. Here is the actual size, perfectly sized. So there's Russia. There's the actual Antarctica, much smaller than Russia, but second largest landmass in the entire continent. Then you see China, you see Canada. Canada's bigger than China, but still, you see the relations there. You see South America. You absolutely see the United States for what it is. And we go on and on and on through all these countries. A highlight there. Do you see that other white third row down, second from the left? That's the real Greenland. That's the real size of it. Another thing you need to know is, do you see how big Russia is? It's almost as wide as Canada. In fact, Canada is only 1/6 less wide than Russia. It's only less than 1,500 kilometers less across than Russia is. But yet when you look at maps, it looks like Russia is this giant extreme distance that spans half the globe. It's just not accurate, not truthful. Never was, never has been. This is horse blinders. We see our maps. Greenland is this giant looking Antarctica, and Antarctica is so stretched across and so pressed top to bottom, it looks like it encompasses the entire bottom of the earth. That's just not true. There's massive amounts of open seas. So here is reality. Flat Earth, old world order versus new world order reality. Actual size of land masses, actual size of bodies of water in this world. Then I put the Mercator distorted map to show you what it is we don't seem to understand. So although the countries and continents are not exactly in their right portion, they're just needed to do this to show you size and scale. This is official. Notice how 71% water, 29% land. Look at North America, Canada, USA, Mexico, comparatively to Russia and China. Now you can see that Canada is massive across. It is way more than 2/3 across of what Russia is. You see Africa as it really is. Many nations, 53, should be 53, I should say. You see India as it really is, Middle East. You see China as it really is in relation to Australia. And you see Antarctica there. They're showing you accurate sizes of these countries, relative relation, but the mass of water. As you can see in Mercator distorted, what we're taught is that Alaska is so outstretched, it's this massive landmass. It's not. Russia is this vast northern extreme. Greenland is the size of the real continent known as Antarctica. That's just not even remotely true. It's so distorted. Africa's twisted. These countries are twisted to straighten them out and then stretched. This happens in eastern Canada. Worst is Russia. It gives everybody a false sense of what Russia really is. Sorry, I should have looked at that. Sorry, everybody. It's important people know that these psychological effects will limit your ability as a subject in this world. Do you think if you understood the world mapped as it really is, it may change the way you develop businesses, how you think of trade? If your military was conditioned properly, do you think that would change how you navigate the world? Absolutely it would. You'd fit in with the modern world, but we're unable to because we're born instituted in a fake physical reality of what our world is. Now, this was great in the time of sailing. Sure, making a great square map for sailors in the time It's why they're able to discover so much following straight lines. I get it. But the problem is it wasn't good for anything else. Mercantile exploration, it was great for when you're using compass, magnetic, north-south, and following degrees. Sure, that worked out great. But you weren't going to bang in to Antarctica. There was massive waters around it to circumnavigate the globe. But people don't understand that. They don't understand the North Pole either. They don't get that either. So this is our Earth as a globe. And what really should be educated to every Canadian. And I mean, I'm not saying that every Chinese, every American, or every Russian is trained this way, but because of military alone and the amount of people who enter the military in places like Russia, China, USA, more Americans, Russians, and Chinese per capita, way outnumbering any Canadians. And then even in Canada's military, if this is not your scope, what I mean is if you're not working in radar or missile defense or communications, you're not going to get this training in Canada. And you already know your subpar GDP per capita. Most Canadians, if not 99th percentile, don't know what I'm talking about here. You have to go to higher education or specific military training to get taught this. The Earth is a globe chopped up this way to make the Mercator maps. That's exactly how it's done. Slices the globes above. Now, everybody can see landmass. Everyone can see water. And then you can see all the spaces after cutting out that globe, right? So now I'm an artist. Now you can see wherever water meets water, I fill in with water. I stretch those squares to fit. Wherever there's land, I color in land. Look what you do to Alaska, British Columbia. Look what you do to Eastern Canada. Look what you do to the Atlantic provinces. Look at the massive area at the top where Greenland is, because these Mercator maps really overimpose the north and the south. And since there's only Antarctica in the south largely, and it's at the extreme tearing, when you go up north, look what it does to Russia. You've amplified Russia almost twofold. Do you know what that does to people when they look at that? Russia's massive, when really it isn't. Russia's far away, when really it isn't. When you start look at oceans in the north. Look how much devastation you do in the north. Just in Russia alone. Russia's been multiplied more than 2 times. Look what it does to the United Kingdom and a good chunk of Europe. Boom. An island state starts to look like a massive conglomerate of an island empire. And it's not. It's very tiny. In fact, it fits into Florida. Who, if you look at the bottom map, now look how tiny Florida is. But when you look at the map of the United Kingdom, you go, oh, no. UK's way bigger than Florida. Not when measured actually and physically. Then you go down the map where they show you the slivers, especially in the north where 71% of our land masses utilized by human civilization are now expanded, when really those aren't true. Look at what Greenland becomes. Look at the elongation of Eastern Canada, as you know as Laurentian. Look what it does to Alaska, pushing it really far out, stretching along when that isn't real. Look at the massive size and scale of Russia. It's completely fake. Nobody taught any subjects in the world anything other than this truth. You go to school in a place like Canada, and I know there's others, but this is important for Americans to know. The Canadians, since 1945, have not been taught anything other than this. This is the truth they must know. The Mercator map. And for most, if not 99% of Canadians, will only know this map and this reality of truth. So again, to give it in other perspectives, to show how they stretch, show how they color and load these things, all boxes are the same. But then now all boxes should be the same in a real accurate map, but they have stretched boxes. From global slivers where the fat equator on a center point at the equator around, look what they do in a cylindrical. Well, it's not a cylinder. You can't make a cylinder, and I don't know if people understand what I mean here, but a flat 2G disc, top and bottom equal, when it's 2 points on a ball, but they make it a cylinder, and then they roll out the map of a cylinder, meaning you had to stretch those fine points in the poles into these elongated rectangles. This is Mercator projection. That's what they've done to you. Look at the massive size and scale of Antarctica that they conveniently cut off. And you've all seen these maps anywhere you go, but they conveniently cut it off so that you don't notice. They try to minimize those, and then they keep the top portions, maximizing the north as though it's accurate. China, Russia, and USA don't do this. Children largely are not taught this. I was getting into shipping and military, the weaknesses of our shipping and military. You can only imagine. Look, now in a different way of looking at this, gotta minimize it down. So you can see in these pie grids, when you cut them like a watermelon, and that's what making this map is, to make this cylinder, to turn it into a cylinder, you tear them apart. You see the massive gaps, another way of explaining it. So China, Russia, and USA have created the greatest militaries and the greatest value and supply chains on Earth post-1945. You can't find any better countries. Subjects overinflate Russia, Alaska, China, Europe, and UK. Americans, Chinese, and Russians do not. This is why Canadians don't transverse the earth. While we don't have shipping over Aframax, we never leave our coast because our understanding of the world is not representational of what the world is. That's what subjugation breeds. And you will find this repeated over and over in all remaining monarchials, all remaining colonies of empires. They're all dumbed down this way. Businesses don't flourish. They don't expand beyond the knowledge of Russia, USA, or China. Pick your poison. Your politicians are already telling you this. We're going to go around USA. We're going to utilize China. That was the answer. First thing out of your politician's mouth. Because they can't deal with the real world. They're flat earth nut jobs. As they were when they were burning people talking about the globe, your politicians still govern you this way. Talk about ignorance in economics, ignorance in global and value and supply chains, ignorance in military as showcased by your pitiful military. How could you ever get a real military? Do you know what kind of investments you have to do to get with the now, to catch up to USA, Russia, China? Do you know how much decades of work it would take? How much transformation and schooling it would take? It takes decades. Your government can't fix this tomorrow. So we're going back now that you've looked at the Azimuthal mapping that USA, Russia, and China do. The 1492 to 1943 that hasn't changed for any of us. You can look at these distorted mercantile flat earthers, the 9 kingdoms, and measure it to colonialism. I know it's hard to see on the map. But all those color codes, you can see the 13 colonies there. You can see Canada. This is British North America. You can see Spanish North America, and Spanish South America, Portuguese South America. Way up there in Greenland, you can see Denmark's Greenland. You can see all the colors of Europe. I know they're so small, but you can go around the earth into Africa, in north and all over, all across into the Asian world, out to the islands, and the many, many tiny points all over the world. And you can see the mercantile way that was not USA, Russia, or China. USA got out of it. I overimpose the old world order, League of Nations, 9 kingdoms, world subjugation. There's overimposed Spain, UK, France, Japan. Japan over by China. All of these 9 kingdoms, their primary enemies were USA, Russia, China. Always have been, always will be. Because those countries do not represent world subjugation or share this value system of the 9 kingdoms. They're superimposed. I'm going to get into in a minute why I've superimposed them for you all. This is the lead up. This is Europe. Here's a little sliver of the Russian Empire. You can see the German Empire. You can see Norway, Sweden, United Kingdom, France, Spain, Italy. You can see Ottoman Empire. And we can go on and on. All 9 kingdoms are all there. This is Europe and the corner of Greece, Ottoman Empire. Greece had lost a bunch, but there's your 9 kingdoms. Flat Earth distorted 9 kingdoms and bordering Russia. At the time, it was a monarchy. It became the colonial battle for Africa, African subjugation and colonization, 1910. These, a sliver of the earth. These were the colonizers of the world. A sliver of the earth. Small little Europe here. 9 kingdoms. Switzerland, right there in the middle. What's that for? Oh yeah, League of Nations, where they all meet, where they craft their ideas of global domination. Global domination. Globalism. 100% 5,000-year strategy of the old world order. And they are flat earth distorted. Always flat earth maps. Center of the world is right here in Switzerland, Geneva. So what happened? Well, we finally got to the point of World War I. Who will be the greatest subjugator of the African savages? That sliver I told you about. So you had it divided in World War I. Emperor of the Third Republic of France. You had King of Great Britain. You had the Tsar of Russia. Tsar is emperor, king, same thing. King of Germany, Emperor of Austria, King of Italy. All monarchies. Every last one of them. What did the 3 allies that we had to fight for as Canadians, we were forced to fight? Everyone celebrates, and our politicians ran USA down. It was just on the news. Doug Ford, Justin Trudeau, and on. Those yellow belly Americans didn't fight World War I. Those cowards. Cowards, they called them. What was World War I fought for? It was to dominate and control African savages. Not human beings, African savages. Okay? It was blue dominators or red dominators. Do you see a good guy there, folks? Emperor, king, czar, king, emperor, king. Wow. Are you a fan of World War One? Can you all tell me why? Can you tell me why? Let's look at the next slide. So in 1914, this is how much colonialism Africa put up with at the height of colonialism. There was left but one, that light blue independent state, just 110 million people out of the more than 790 million Africans. Only one tiny blue state over there on the right side, Eastern Africa, that is all that remained independent of any colonial empire out of Europe. Africa got it the worst. Who do we have as the strongest? And they go by strongest and most Africans subjugated. Great Britain, France, Germany, Belgium, Portugal, Italy, Spain. 1914. Colonial empire's doing real good. They got them black people all chained up, locked down. You're our property. Assets. So that was World War One. This is what your Canadian politicians said Americans were cowards over. Cowards! Cowards wouldn't even come help fight World War One. Cowards! This is what your fascist politicians, conservative, liberal, NDP, this is what they fought for. This is what they think makes a good Canadian. Oh, so this is World War One concluded. What changed, everybody? Oh, I get it. All the German African assets, meaning colonized and subjugated Africans, transferred to France and England. The victors of war get the spoils. Yeah. Right there, I tell you, World War One, German assets become British and French assets. There were treaties, reparations by Germany to not the Africans, not those subjugated. No, those subjugated are our property now. Those lands belong to us, the French and the English. Got it? You will pay reparations to us, not those in bondage, slavery, and servitude who've been robbed of their identity and culture. No, you'll give us the money. We will continue to exploit these people. They're our property, our cattle. USA and Russia were ashamed for their participation. How do we know that, everybody? How do we know USA and Russia were ashamed? Well, Russia went into civil war. They went into civil war and they destroyed the monarchy. Yeah. In actuality, the monarchy ordered the Russians to come in and help the British and English do this. Where do the Russians have a stake in Africa right here, folks? Show me on that ledger of colonization. Where are Russians in this? Why are Russians fighting for British and French assets against the Germans? Well, they shouldn't be, right? Makes no sense. And Russians agreed. They said, no way. And they had a civil war. Before the conclusion of World War II, the Russians were in full civil war. Monarchy fell, and for a brief period, Russia became the We the People Republic, no different than the United States of America. That's how you know they were ashamed. How do you know USA was ashamed? Oh, they removed all context of Remembrance Day. They removed any celebrations focusing on World War I. You'll never find USA creating celebrations of World War I. Memorial Day, they've outlawed all of it. We'll get into part 2 tomorrow. We're going to go into all these things with Russia and USA. But I believe we need to start here. We need to start with this education. USA immediately transitioned into ending all Indian wars. Yeah. World War I taught America that this is not the way. And what we saw and what we helped achieve here was wrong. On the fundamental human level, it is anti-American. The first thing they did when they all got home and how USA transitioned, those military men returned home, those high generals said, look, We saw some really bad things. There's bad human atrocities there. That's not us. And these folks, these military folks, went on to change USA forever. In fact, within 2 years, changing politics, these military men from World War I would go on to end the American Indian Wars, end the idea of the savage Indian forevermore. This war changed America for the better. America said, no, we will never do that to other human beings again. We will end that now. It's wrong. America worked at it. It took a long time. They had to change many states, but they got it done. But this is the war that changed America forevermore, made the America it is today, the transitional America by 1945. Russia too. So what happened in 1945? Whoa, what's this? A brand new map. Has anyone ever looked at the logo of the United Nations on the grid? Well, the United Nations Security Council 1945 outlawed all idea of anything other than azimuthal mapping. And guess what, everybody? You pick your center point. Every nation, welcome to new mapping. You pick you on a center point. Did you all learn this in school? We were supposed to be. Oh, look, decolonization and proper mapping as it would be viewed from space. Hence, what did we end up with here? A Cold War, a space race, USA, Russia, China, and even India getting in on it after independence. Africa getting into it on independence. You see Africa change there. Look at all the rotating members in Africa. Not one colonial there anymore. USA, Russia, the allies of World War II were hard at her, at least all the way up to 2005. But those colonial monsters reared their ugly head, and they stopped at all the important ones, right? Like Canada, Australia, New Zealand, all the island countries. No. Not the French and British assets. No. We're not going to do that. We're United Nations Security Council members. We're not going to allow that to happen. People say, oh, the Security Council's screwed, the UN's corrupted. Sure it is. It's corrupted by UK and France, of course. Does anyone from UK and France, can you show me world maps that you're taught in school that look anything like this? How come? How come there's no other views besides the views that are forced upon you by your government? So, just so everybody knows, this is USA NORAD, Northern USA, center point. This is the bombing targets of the U.S. nuclear program. You like that? USA is the center point. It's the military basic truth of USA before World War II, but absolutely forevermore after World War II. Distance to target. And again, where are we centered upon? This is what USA does from space. This is how they map forevermore. It's how they communicate, how they plan, strategize flights, how they plan, strategize shipping routes, how they plan military offenses. This is how it's done. It's well knowledgeable by a large amount of the American population. How about North Korea? Whoa, this is right out of North Korea. Azimuthal mapping, ICBM truth. Even North Korea has got more on the ball than, sadly, Canadians, Australians. So this is North Korea. Look at Australia. You can see Canada, a good portion of USA, and some of even Mexico. How their maps work out with how they measure distances, ICBM, right? They got Russia, China there on their back. North Korea's positioned very well. See how secure North Korea is? Look at Japan, Australia. Look, North Korea is very secure. In reality check, how the world is. See the Arctic just above it? It's looking up at the Arctic. When we start looking at things as they are, not as our crown has told us, the world changes on any perspective. America, Russia, and China do this absolutely. Any country they deal with, they've been doing this for many, many decades. This is what they'll do. This is how they look at you, back and forth like a chessboard. When I say USA's playing chess, Canada's playing checkers, I'm not joking. I'm not joking. Now we have USA here. Where is USA on Azimuthal? And it's in big trouble via Canada. Donald J. Trump, Elon Musk reality check. So I'm going to try to blow this up for y'all. So why is USA so interested in Canada? Well, it's Azimuthal. Not hard to figure out. What's that great big mass blocking USA from dealing with China, Russia, and all of the trade out east? You can see the Bering Strait where, yes, USA matches Russia and China tit for tat. But what about that giant open region on the other side? All of Africa out to South America. All of that open route. That all is Russia and China, not USA. USA's resources at this point are immensely redistributed. Yes, there you see Greenland, right there. And that's where USA holds a base. Wouldn't it be better for USA if they had the same leverage Russia and China had? The same azimuthal leverage as they had, considering they are the dominant power? Whereas Canada, and you can see on that map where Canada's population lines along that 49th parallel to block USA, and USA has to put so many resources, travel so far just to put up a brave face. This is real mapping, real world to scale and positioning as it really is on a real globe. Yes, the distortion on the outside, but the closer you are to your point, the very least amount of distortion. And you change your point. Whereas not on the old UK flat earth maps or France or the rest of the colonials. And that's to keep you ignorant, keep you from ever getting into proper trade or understanding of military objectives. It's to keep you, the people, very ignorant and under their thumb. So here we go back to the flat earth, the Great Wall of Canada, without any azimuthal mapping. This is what Canadians seemingly don't understand, that you are the wall between America and the Great North and securing this world. You make them waste tremendous amounts of resources. Look at the stretch out to Alaska, all of that. And this is what America has to deal with. They have to go around Canada, protect Canada, ship for Canada, protect Canada's shipping that Canada can't even create. America wonders why. Sorry, I'm going to minimize this a bit. This is what Donald J. Trump and the GOP can't understand. And this is what they just don't know. Canadians don't know any better. This is human population Canada. And most of it, that green line, I think you can all see that green line. Overwhelming amounts of the human population are below the green line. So meaning most of Canadian population, almost 70th percentile is below the green line. A literal Great Wall of China. The only time it doesn't, of course, is Great Lakes. You can see that there. But that's the Great Wall against the USA. So USA is left completely unpatrolling, unable to protect that, which is North America. They're not. The NORAD base there, up Montana area, and two other states, that's where USA operates its most northerly NORAD base. I showed you on Azimuthal and how much they're limiting. They've had to move on to Greenland, that one, and of course Florida is the other point in their trifecta encompassing Canada. They do this largely without anything from Canada. Canada's politicians are bullshitters. They lie. They don't even have any concept of any of this. Completely inept. And you hear it from your politicians. Your politicians are more inept than the average American. The average American's like, did that idiot just open his mouth? Whether they are conservative, liberal, NDP does not matter. They showcase how imbecilic they really are. And from the other side, from the Azimuthal side, the American looks at you like you're a dullard. And then worse than that is what Russia and China see and what they are understanding. They're going, wow, America is screwed. And they're laughing. So I'm showing you here who got into this relatively quickly. What really scared USA was, of course, in 1957, without a doubt, it was Sputnik 1 from space. This is Russian. This is reality. This is 1957. Russia from space, the Arctic. They pinpointed, they used satellite Sputnik 1 there. Look at the world now. There is no doubt. And USA pissed their pants. And for real reason why they would. There's Russia dominating the world, 1957. Look where we are now. How long ago is that now, folks? Almost 70 years ago. Almost 70 years ago. Top secret, 1951, not from space, but from science. This is top secret, released. These are documents released. This is 1951 Russian files. This is what the Americans knew Russia was up to. Americans were on it too. Russia Azimuthal value and supply chains, already in 1951. The world as it really is, according to where? Where's the center point there? Moscow, folks. That's how Moscow saw the world in 1951. They were already operating that way. That dark yellow's Russia entirely with the center point. But look who's right below him, China. Remember, communism, both communist countries at that time. Russia ICBM Azimuthal, total destruction. Goodbye, Canada, USA, Mexico, Central America. Easy. These are non-stoppable nukes in this world. All of Africa, if they wanted. Mass amounts of South America there. See how it's curved around? Real distances, folks. Azimuthal. Center point, Moscow. This is all the land mass in the world that Russia's capable of striking and destroying. And no one can stop it. You won't get Elon Musk or Donald J. Trump to deny what I'm showing you here. That is Azimuthal as it is. This is reality. Here's China. We thought, you thought Australia was safe and all those island countries? Not on your life. There's Beijing, Azimuthal Center. Look at their ICBM radius. What Russia can't get to in first strike, China takes care of, no problem. Thought you got away? Not in your life. The entire Pacific, gonzo, good chunk, same overlap. There's, of course, Africa. There's Canada. In all these scenarios, Canada is gone. Completely gone. And you wonder why the USA covets the Arctic. Why they covet Canada. Why they need Canada. Well, these are good reasons. Flat earthers and subjugation. mapped which countries still have a monarchy. There's massive. In that first center globe, I know it's hard to see because, again, it's such a small area, are all the European states, and they go into which ones, the 9 kingdoms of yesterday, are still the 9 kingdoms of today. Besides Ottoman Empire, that's now Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and many other monarchies, subdivided, princes underneath an emperor became now the kings of their own territory. Yeah. Very pathetic. And even some republics who say they're not monarchy are in fact monarchies. They may be republic in name, but they have what's called a president prime minister, and the relationship is that of a monarch and a parliament. Didn't change. Nouns changed, definitions remained entirely the same. Very supposedly sneaky. Didn't fool America, Russia, or China. Didn't fool them. Countries stuck in Charles' Mercator projection. These are all subjects and savages defined. As you can clearly see, it's Canada, all of the Caribbean, many island states, southern tips of South America, many islands. I know some of you may be able to see some of it. See all those named islands? There are so many. There are so many. There are British assets. They never turned over, even though that's what they promised America. Charles refuses to, and all of these people are taught this map of the world, so skewed, where Greenland's massive, Alaska's massive, Russia's massive, and there's these waters compressed in the middle but exploded out the bottom and top. Not accurate, not truthful, and makes all those subjects and savages defined in these many, many colonial states ignorant to trade or how to trade properly, ignorant to distances or how to factor that in, or making routes or even understanding trade routes, having to rely on the crown and who the crown provides, because they'd rather you not procure these things yourselves, because heaven forbid if you did and you went as Azimuthal, you wouldn't need the crown anymore. In fact, you might be angry, right? It's better to keep you ignorant, oblivious, baboonous. It's better for you to be in that state and be able to function as an individual in the world today defined by the UN Charter 1945. Heaven forbid you ever do that, because you may want to be citizens now. You may want to take stock and inventory on your lives. You can't have that. That would be too much like decolonization. So how is France in all of this, folks? Well, not much different. They've never decolonized anything. Look at all of their holdings out in the Pacific, Atlantic. All of it, they're still there. They have not removed themselves. Even on the eastern tip of Africa, they still hold all of that out in the Asian world. France has not done anything. And people say, oh, France, free, liberty. Yeah, right. Liberty for who? Liberty for who? Do you know how many people have been the victim of nuclear bombs by France? Nuclear tests launched, exploded up above these island states to see what the radiational impacts against the natives would be. Worst country in the world, bar nobody else. Bar nobody else. You can't find any other country to compare to the human testing done by France, who does their own nuclear enrichment of the 5 and has not decolonized. Nothing. Only by force out of Africa via USA and Russia. That's it. Other than that, they've kept everything else. They refuse to go any further. So this is total monarchies in the world that are Mercator projection, that all the people in all these countries Look at the mass of Europe down into the east and west side of Africa, into the Middle East entirely, poisoning minds, Southeast Asia, all of the Asian world states, indigenous peoples, Australia, New Zealand, Greenland, Canada. We can go on and on. They actually break up into a lot of countries. Japan's there too. Redesigned, imposed by the USA. Japan is the only one, and Germany, both of those, even though Germany, republic, Japan, monarchy, they're constitutionally imposed. And they're trying right now to breach American imposed constitutional designs post-World War II, backed up by the USSR at the time. Japan's trying to break some of those. Germany is too. USA hasn't let them yet. Prime Minister of Japan just visited USA, saw Donald Trump, said they had a good meeting. We'll see if Japan is going to get their way. They're not. Japan and Germany are the only two countries of the kingdom empires that are no longer Mercator projection. They're not flat earthers. Imposed by USA. USA imposed that on them, and USSR said, no, you will be this way. You will teach your people this way, amongst other things. Most people never be taught this stuff. That concludes my presentation. It's important that Americans know this, Donald J. Trump, GOP know this, that is the state of Canadians and the vast majority. Part 2 tomorrow is the world of drugs and trade, the drug immigration system, like never showcased ever before. Part 2 of this was your military and value and supply chains. Introduction of Azimuthal mapping. It's never ever really been showcased to any subjects or savages in any real meaningful way, unless you went for higher education, swore the crown oath of allegiance, and operated in a key industry for your monarchy. But it was never mainstream. Never going to be. That's what we went through today. Tomorrow we're going to go into other sides of this, the massive immigration, again, which 3 countries don't participate: USA, China, Russia. Who does participate? Again, all of those flat earth constitutional monarchies, beyond all measures of reasonable, sane, only one purpose, and that is mass human subjugation, like no other in the world today. We're going to go through that, and in presentation 3, we're going to absolutely hit what is Prime Minister, what are premiers, what is Canada's role in these narratives? How are they there to destroy America? What is their purpose? What are they defined to do? Never ever showcased before. Real documentation, real credible, verifiable. Just like this video. Share, get it out there. It is going to be highly unpopular, highly hated by so many Canadians, so many subjugated, institutionalized. I can already imagine the comments, but this is the real world. This is how it operates, and we don't. We live in a fantasy, a crown institution. We're in a jail with bars of the mind, created against you since you were a child, against your parents and their parents and the grandparents before them, and on and on. That's the truth of colonialism, the ugly truth of crown and subjugation. It's what Americans need to understand about their northern neighbors and where the Canadian people are in major majority. Thank you. That's my video. Again, share. You need to be the change. This is truth. I know.